I'm doing this by the seat of my pants right now because we're in fall camp. But I've got some friends out there that come to my aid, and this one's one of the top national voices and reporters and insiders in all of college football. And he's an Oklahoma State graduate, but man, he's gone on to, you know, wealth and fame and being important on the national stage with Stadium now. He's broke more big time stories in college football than I think anybody out there. That's Brett McMurphy joins us now. So good way to start the day. Brett, good morning.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, I think I went to school with Tom Hutton. Yeah, he goes way back. No, just kidding. Hey, I'm
Either
wondering. Go ahead.
I was gonna say either you went to school with Tom or you went to school with his wife. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
you know one
one
of
of the
them.
others. Hey, I'm just disappointed about my alma mater. Come on, guys, why didn't we file for the trademark for the Oklahoma State University? Why do we let Ohio State go out and try to patent the word "the"? They beat us to the punch. Maybe we can do something about that.
Yeah,
Maybe not.
I tell you what, the is such a simple word. If they're so concerned about the word the, and they're an institution of higher learning, I don't know. I don't know what that says when you try and trademark the word the. Now, if you go out and try and trademark the word Schadenfreude, which is the word of the day. I get these word of the days. I have no idea why they come on my email, but I've been starting to, look at them in the definition because in broadcasts, Holcomb and I like to shock each other. We like to wordsmith a little bit on Saturday, and we explain it because some of the audience I understand won't understand some of the words we throw out there. But the really, you want to put a trademark on the?
Yeah.
I'm ashamed of Ohio State. That's too simple for the Buckeyes.
A lot of good responses, of course, on Twitter, especially Michigan's official account sent out a tweet with the word "of."
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but hey, the
I
good news
saw
is
that.
we're a
I
couple
saw
weeks
that.
away from actually talking about actual games. So I guess this nonsense keeps us entertained till the games get here.
And you know what, Brett? That's what I was going to bring up for somebody in your position. And I know, the last couple of years, you've been involved in monster stories in the late summer and into August, heading into the season. And especially last year was you were the guy that. Speaking of the Ohio State
Yeah,
University,
exactly.
you were the guy that was breaking the news with the assistant coach and Urban Meyer and all the issues there. But would you say the fact that everybody's looking at lists right now and everybody's paying attention to a story like you just mentioned, the trademarking of the in front of Ohio State University, that this is a fairly quiet fall camp and preseason for college football?
Yeah, it really is, and I think a lot of the national guys and probably the local guys too that cover these schools are glad that there aren't these type of stories that you track. I mean, basically, we had obviously the Urban Meyer, Zach Smith stuff that I reported last year. We had the one off season. We had the Hugh Freeze stuff going on, where he was dismissed at Ole Miss because of certain improprieties. So yeah, this has been a really quiet off season. So hopefully, we've only got a couple weeks to go. Cross our fingers, but I think we should be in the clear. But with college football, you never know. But yeah, that's why some of these things that you see getting a lot of attention now. It's because, quite frankly, nothing else is going on, and people are dying for some kind of relevant news or games or results or anything like that. I guess the next thing to keep your eye on is Monday at noon Eastern Time, 11 o'clock Oklahoma time. The AP will release their preseason top 25 poll. So that'll get people talking about, who's too high, who's too low, who's not going to be ranked. I don't think Oklahoma State will be in the top 25. I voted in the AP poll. I did not put Oklahoma State in the top 25. That's not a prediction. That's only how I see them starting out the season. But the good news for Oklahoma State is, on average, there is 8 to 9 teams that are not ranked in the preseason top 25 poll that finished the year in the top 25. So it's not actually a bad thing not to be ranked. So that's something to look forward to Monday. And then, of course, 5 days later, Saturday, Miami and Florida kick it off in Orlando, and then Arizona and Hawaii. And then the following week, everybody jumps in.
Yeah, again, Brett McMurphy from Stadium and an Oklahoma State grad, and one of the top national reporters when it comes to being in the know in college football, joining us here on Triple Play Sports Radio. All right, I want to get to mainly the Big 12, but let's handle one national question for you. Obviously, Alabama and Clemson. It was Clemson, Alabama in the coaches poll. I think it'll probably be Alabama, Clemson in the AP. We'll see what happens there. But those are the two heavyweights. There's about 4 or 5 schools people consider beyond them, Georgia and Oklahoma, and you mentioned Michigan. There's several others that are looked at. Do you have a team out there that is maybe not being talked about much that you think could end up in the college football playoff that right now nobody's really looking at least for that?
Well, I mean, a couple things. I actually think Clemson will be number one in the AP poll. I think they've earned the respect. I actually have Georgia second on my ballot. I had Alabama third. But you nailed it. There's basically, if you go back 20 years, the national champion has been ranked in the preseason top 7, 18 of those 20 years. So going by the coaches poll, it's probably going to be the schools you mentioned: Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma, Michigan, Ohio State. I think the 7th team will be probably LSU. So, again, based on history, your champion's going to come out of those 7. If you go outside of those 7, a team, a dark horse, if you will, which I really don't think they're a dark horse, but they are pretty much because they're not in that core 7. And, it's funny they're a dark horse, yet they were picked to win the Pac-12. I really like Utah. They've got a ton of people back. They were decimated by injuries at the end of last year. They had their backup quarterback in the bowl game. They did go to the Pac-12 title game. I really like what they got coming back. Zach Moss, one of the best running backs in the country. They good quarterbacks in Jason Shelley. They have a monster depth at defensive line, and that's their strength. Washington, which has ruled that conference for a lot of years, it lost everybody defensively. I love Chris Peterson. They're also breaking in a new quarterback. They lost Jake Browning. So I like Utah kind of as one of those dark horses that you mentioned to maybe rise up. But it's kind of funny to call the favorite in the Pac-12 a dark horse.
Well, and you know what? You picked the exact team that I've had because I do think that Utah's got it. And I think with Kyle Whittingham, he's quietly done a tremendous coaching job just about everywhere he's gone, but certainly there at Utah. And they're going to be reliant on one of two things. Either the Pac-12 is going to have to win some games as a league to boost their stock, or Utah is going to have to really spank everybody and be demonstrative. But if they do one of those two things, they could sneak into that, and they could be a team that could contend, because I think they can play physical football with a Clemson or an Alabama.
Right, and that's, you're absolutely right, and that's Whittingham's mindset is physical play. And he remarked, early in fall practice that they've got a new offensive coordinator, Andy Ludwig. He comes over for Vanderbilt, and he wants to be more physical. He wants to have a more physical style, and that's exactly what Whittingham wants. And what's funny, when I was at ESPN a few years ago, all the coaches would come up for the car wash. When the Pac-12 coaches were up there, Whittingham is the only coach that has asked me this question, and it was late in the day when interviews were winding down, and he said, "Hey, does ESPN have a gym, and can I use it?" He actually wanted to go lift that day. So, yeah, he's got a mindset of a physical type of team. And, you're right. They've got to win the Pac-12. They can't lose 2 games, because it's one thing that the College Football Playoff Committee has told us. whether they want to talk about strength of schedule and all the various things that they mentioned, you can't have two in that loss column to have any shot to get to the playoff, and that's what's killed the Pac-12 the past few years.
All right, let's move to the Big 12. You were in Arlington, Big 12 media days. I thought it was interesting. I really think if you're going to put a blanket over the league, my blanket is going to say parity on it, because I think certainly Oklahoma deserves to be favored. Texas is the flavor right now. I'm not as convinced because of all the turnover there, and I'm still not convinced that the Mensa man is going to be able to create a monster again at Texas. But you look at Iowa State. I look at Baylor on their roster and depth chart, Oklahoma State, TCU, even Texas Tech, if Matt Wells can get this going in a hurry. I look at those teams as all being teams capable of knocking each other off and maybe knocking off one of the top two. So I look at this league as being, a great league to watch, but maybe not a big threat to do much in the finals of the college football playoff.
Well, I think I agree with you about you saying about the depth, and I love Matt Wells. He will do a great job with Texas Tech. All the new coaches, I think that will do good jobs. I think Les Miles got the toughest road to hoe, so they're going to struggle again. But everybody else in the league could compete. I still think Oklahoma could make a run to the playoffs. We'll have to see, obviously, with Jalen Hurts, the difference with him at quarterback. I do think that any dip Oklahoma has offensively with Jalen compared to Kyler Murray, I think the defense will be much improved with Alex Grinch, the new defensive coordinator. I think he was one of the top new assistant hires in the country last year. And they have 10 starters back, which is either good news or bad news, depending on your viewpoint, because they were flat out horrible last year. So hopefully Grinch can figure out the best way to get these guys to play. I agree with you with Texas. I think I ranked them 14th. I think they'll come in maybe at top 10 when the AP polls announced Monday. They'll probably be around that 9, 10, 11 range. I think that's too high, and I do think Tom Herman's going to get it done there. I just think they suffered, Robert, too many losses defensively. They lost a ton defensively as far as senior starters on the defensive side. Offensive side, obviously Sam Ellinger's back. I just think everybody – the last thing you remember about Texas is them soundly beating Georgia, and take nothing away from that. But they lost a lot of people, and now they've had some injuries in fall camp. I think we'll know. I think we'll get a good read on Texas week 2 when LSU comes to town. We'll get a good read on both teams. I think LSU could be a national contender. I think their schedule is too tough. They play 6 top 25 teams, so I don't think they can survive that. But I do think they will go in and win at Texas. But if Texas wins that game, then hey, maybe they are back. We'll have to see. But I think they're going to dip a little bit more than most of the national people think, because I just think they've suffered too many personnel losses, especially on the defensive side.
I need the English Orgeronish dictionary translation book, because I've been struggling with that one lately. I'm having a hard time understanding that language down in Baton Rouge. No response.
No, I wish I had a good one-liner for you. I don't. I will say this, for people that either are or are not a fan of his, since he took over for Les Miles, I think he's been their coach for 40-something games. Half of those games have been against ranked opponents, and he's got about a 65% winning percentage against ranked opponents. So, again, obviously they've got to beat Alabama. They haven't been able to do that. I think they could surprise some people. I really like LSU. And, the question for LSU is, can they get their offense where it's not so methodical? Joe Brady comes in. He was an assistant with the New Orleans Saints last year, and Joe Burrow, he kind of broke out the end of last season, had a huge game against UCF in the Fiesta Bowl win. So is that a omen of things to come, or are they going to go back to the run and play defense style that they've done for so many years? Ogeron says he wants to throw it around, spread it out. We'll have to see.
Yeah, and I was joking, but obviously I do have a hard time understanding him at times. I
Oh
think a
yeah,
lot of people
absolutely.
do. Yeah, but I do respect Ed Orgeron. Now I know there's a lot of conjecture out there. We're not even going to get into this as to his recruiting past, and there've been books written about that. But I will say this: they are a tough football team, and like you said, they played really good opponents, and they've come out of it pretty good. In fact, their schedule this year, I think, is on the side of being more brutal. And I mean, if Bill Snyder were playing the LSU schedule, I think
Yeah.
he would wince. Speaking of, you mentioned the new coaches, and you were there in Arlington, heard everybody. I'm a Matt Wells guy, and I think Matt Wells was given a decent deck of cards to work with in Lubbock. The thing I see as a problem with the other guys, and you mentioned Les has the hardest job, but even with Neil Brown and with Chris Kleiman, their deck of cards, they need to reshuffle and they need to go buy a new deck at the dime store because, I think those teams don't have as much to work with initially, and it'll be tough for the fans in those markets at those schools not to judge their guys early because I think they ought to be given a little bit of a pass. Dana didn't leave much, and neither did Coach Snyder.
Yeah, I mean, of the four, I think Wells is in the best position for year one. I think Chris Kleiman after that is in a good position because he comes, from North Dakota State, and they're not identical to what Kansas State did, but kind of the same philosophy. So I think that'll be a quicker transition. I asked him, I said, how's it feel to be the first person in the history of college football to replace a coach whose name is on the stadium? And he goes, well, I really didn't think about it that way. He goes, hopefully it won't be that big of a deal, but, we'll have to see. And then after that, I think Neil Brown at West Virginia, and like you said, obviously Will Greer's gone, a ton of talent offensively, only 9 starters back. I think he will do a tremendous job at West Virginia, but year one, I really think they're going to struggle. And then, Les in Kansas, that's tough. I mean, they may win their first 2 games, and that'd be great, but then I don't see him getting a win in the final 10 games. So it's going to be tough for Les. He's obviously drawn a lot of attention to Kansas, which is part of the reason they hired him. But I think, when you look 3 years down the road, I think it'll be a horse race between Wells, Brown, and Kleiman for the most successful of those new coaches after 3 years. But I agree with you. Year one, I think Wells has the best chance. Obviously, he's got his quarterback back. And look, Tech can put up points if they, again, just play any kind of defense, and they can have a decent season.
Brett McMurphy with us again from Stadium, and we'll wrap it up here pretty quick. One thing I was going to let you know, because this might be a good story. We were sitting around before the game in Manhattan last year with the K-State radio crew. Wyatt Thompson and Matt Walters, their sideline guys, good friend of mine. And they were telling us that when Bill Snyder retired the first time, that he was up in the press box every practice, watching from up in the he had an office in the press box.
Wow.
And he was up there watching practice every day during the Ron Prince tenure. And they all thought, you know what, we'll be shocked if he isn't doing it again next year with Chris. They didn't know who the coach was going to be, but they said if there's a change, and they were anticipating there would be, they think you'll be up there watching practice every day. So not only is the stadium named after him, but his eyes are watching what you're doing every day, which is kind of interesting. Last thing, Oklahoma State, your alma mater, opens up in the Pacific Northwest in Corvallis against Oregon State. There's another team that's rebuilding with Jonathan Smith. Your thoughts, maybe early thoughts on that game. I don't know if you've been to Corvallis. I'm sure you've been to Eugene. Talk a little bit about that, and then what's your season going to be like? Well, will you travel each week? How are you going to be doing your job during the fall?
Well, for my season, I'll be Stadium Studios are in Chicago, so I'm still based in Tampa. So I'll go up to Chicago and do some stuff Mondays and Tuesdays in studio, and then I'll do stuff remote from Tampa Wednesday through Friday, and hoping to have a new college football show on Stadium in early September, which we're still trying to finalize the date on that, but hopefully it'll be Tuesday, but it'll re-air all during the week. But as far as Oklahoma State, I have been to Corvallis. I've not been to a game at Corvallis, but I have been to Corvallis. I think the key for Oklahoma State is, play like they played against ranked teams last year, and don't play like they played against unranked teams last year. I mean, 4-1 against ranked teams last year, should have been 5-0. Except for the Oklahoma heartbreaking Oklahoma loss, and then what was it, 1-4, 1-5 against unranked teams. They have to be more consistent. That's not a surprise. As you mentioned, Mike Gundy has put it all on him for what happened last year, and I think that's huge, and I think that's big for the team, and certainly how the situation plays out at quarterback. I mean, you're there every day. From a distance, I'm hearing probably the similar things to you about Brown and Sanders. So we'll have to see when that decision is made. And I think I'm more fascinated to see, once the decision is made, no matter who it is, how quick of a trigger Gundy will have. Will he leave the starter in and let them play through mistakes? Or is he going to have a quick hook and, hey, let's go with the other guy and see if he can get something going? I think that's something that I'm fascinated to see what will happen. But, again, I said I don't think Oklahoma State will be ranked in the top 25. I understand why they won't be. I think they can finish the year as a top 25 team, and I think the key is, they should get off to a 3-0 start. The Oregon State game will be tricky. Corvallis, that long of a trip on a Friday night. Hopefully the weather cooperates and it's not typical rainy and all that stuff that they usually get up there. But then, the opener against Texas, I think that can set the tone for the season. Obviously, Gundy has owned Texas, 4 or 5 in a row. Oklahoma State's defeated the Longhorns. If they get that game, I think if the schedule sets up nicely, they can get a great deal of momentum. Possibly be 7-0 when they go at Iowa State, which I think could be the second best team in the conference. So, I'm excited to see what happens, and I think it can be a big year for the Cowboys, but obviously they got to get off to a quick start, and no news here, but I think it's going to come down to quarterback play.
I think that and improvement on defense. I know Oklahoma gets all the defensive scuttlebutt and talk here because their defense was even worse. But remember, Oklahoma State gave up a school record 32 points a game, and you just can't do that. And I think that's something that Coach Gundy has got his eyes on, as well as the quarterbacks here early in fall camp heading toward the season. He knows his defense has got to be better. It can't.
You're right, and I agree. I guess it's just when you're scoring a ton of points, it kind of overshadows how bad the defense is. So you're absolutely right. But you just wonder if there is a slight regression offensively, and I don't know. Maybe the offense will be better. Excited to see new offensive coordinator Sean Gleason how it looks with him at the helm. But yeah, you're right. Obviously, the defense has to improve. The old joke is it can't be any worse. So I guess there is hope on that side too. But again, I think Oklahoma State can beat everybody on their schedule. That's the good news. So will they beat everybody? Certainly we will find out.
Hey, Brett, appreciate it. Look forward to watching you this season, and again. Thanks for coming on, and we'll talk to you hopefully soon.
Yeah, anytime, Robert. Thank you. Talk to you soon.